The rain had been falling over Manhattan for 3 consecutive days, a cold, persistent rain that seemed to wash away the city's sins while burying others deeper into the asphalt. Elena Vargas, 29 years old, stood behind the counter of a small Italian restaurant in the heart of Little Italy, her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, her hands still trembling from exhaustion after a 12-hour shift. She had been working at Rosario's for nearly 4 years now. It was not the life she had imagined when she graduated from nursing school, but life had a way of rewriting plans without asking permission. Her mother's illness had drained every savings account, every dream, every possibility of a different future. Now, she worked double shifts to pay for treatments that seemed to do little more than buy time. The restaurant was nearly empty that Thursday evening. The rain had kept most customers away, and Elena was grateful for the quiet. She wiped down the mahogany bar, her reflection staring back at her in the polished surface, dark circles under her eyes, lines of worry that had appeared too early, a woman who had aged beyond her years, not from time, but from weight. The bell above the door chimed. Elena looked up and felt her stomach tighten. Victoria Ashworth walked in like she owned the city, and in many ways she did. Blonde hair perfectly styled, a designer coat that cost more than Elena's yearly salary, and an expression that suggested the world existed, solely for her convenience. Behind her followed 2 assistants and a man Elena did not recognize, but whose tailored suit screamed wealth. Victoria's husband, Richard Ashworth, was one of the most powerful real estate developers in New York. Their family had been coming to Rosario's for years, not because they appreciated the food, but because it made them feel sophisticated to dine in authentic establishments. Elena had served them countless times. Each visit left her feeling smaller than before. "Table for 4, Victoria announced without looking at Elena. "The private room in the back. And do try to be quick about it. We have important people waiting." Elena nodded, grabbing menus. "Of course, Mrs. Ashworth. Right this way." As she led them through the restaurant, Elena noticed another group seated in the corner booth. 4 men in dark suits, speaking in low voices. She had seen them before. They came every Thursday, always ordered the same thing, always paid in cash, and always left generous tips. Marco, the owner, had told her never to ask questions about them, never to linger at their table longer than necessary, never to make eye contact with the man in the center, Dominic Marchetti. Even his name carried weight in certain circles. Elena had heard whispers, fragments of conversations that stopped whenever she approached. She knew enough to understand that Dominic was not a man whose attention one wanted to attract. He ran something far more dangerous than real estate, an empire built in shadows, cemented with loyalty and fear. She seated the Ashworth party and took their drink orders, her hands steady despite her exhaustion. When she returned with a bottle of their preferred wine, Victoria was in the middle of a loud complaint about the weather, the traffic, and the general inconvenience of existing among ordinary people. "And honestly," Victoria continued, her voice carrying across the room, "the help these days is absolutely unbearable. No one knows their place anymore." Elena poured the wine silently, her jaw tight. Richard laughed, a hollow sound. Now, dear, not everyone can be as refined as you." "Obviously not." Victoria turned her gaze to Elena for the first time. "You there, girl, what is your name?" "Elena, ma'am." "Elena." Victoria tasted the name like something unpleasant. "Mexican?" "Colombian, actually, but I was born here in New York." "Same thing." Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "Tell me, Elena, do you have aspirations, dreams, or is this," she gestured around the restaurant, "the extent of your ambition?" Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I am working to support my family, Mrs. Ashworth. There is no shame in honest work." The table fell silent. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "No shame." She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Darling, look at yourself. Look at your uniform, your hair, your entire existence. You serve people like me. That is your purpose, your meaning. Without people like us, you would have nothing. You should be grateful, not defensive." Elena's hands trembled as she set down the wine bottle. She wanted to speak, wanted to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat, trapped by years of swallowing her pride to survive. "I asked you a simple question," Victoria continued, her voice rising. "Do you think you are equal to us? Do you think your pathetic little life has the same value as mine?" And then a voice, low, controlled, dangerous. "She does not need to." Answer that. Every head in the room turned. Dominic Marchetti had risen from his booth. He stood 6'2", broad-shouldered, with dark hair that showed the first hints of silver at the temples. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, and they were fixed on Victoria with an intensity that made her shrink back in her seat. He walked slowly toward their table. His men remained seated, watching but not moving. They knew, as everyone in that room suddenly understood, that Dominic Marchetti did not need protection. He was the protection. "I asked her a question," Victoria said, but her voice had lost its edge. "This is a private conversation." Dominic stopped beside Elena. He did not touch her, did not look at her. His entire focus remained on Victoria. "You come into this restaurant," he said quietly, "a restaurant that has served this community for 50 years, and you insult its people. You demean a woman who works harder in one shift than you have worked in your entire life. And you do this loudly, publicly, as if your wealth gives you permission to strip others of their dignity." Richard stood up. "Now listen here. Do you know who I am? I could have you removed from this establishment with a single phone call." Dominic smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Richard Ashworth, real estate. 37 properties in Manhattan alone. 3 lawsuits pending for unsafe building conditions. A wife who spends $40,000 a month on clothes, while your workers earn minimum wage." He tilted his head. "Did I miss anything?" Richard's face went pale. Dominic turned his attention back to Victoria. "You asked this woman if she thinks she is better than you. Let me answer for her. She is, in every way that matters. She shows up, she works. She cares for people who cannot care for themselves. She has more worth in her smallest action than you possess in your entire existence." Victoria's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. "Now," Dominic's continued, his voice dropping to barely a whisper, "you have a choice. You can apologize to her. Here, now, sincerely. Or you can leave this restaurant and never return. But know this. If you choose the second option, I will remember. And I do not forget." The silence stretched. Rain continued to fall against the windows. Elena stood frozen, unsure if she was dreaming. Victoria looked at her husband. Richard looked at the table. Neither found courage there. Finally, Victoria stood. She gathered, her coat with shaking hands. "This is absurd. We are leaving." "No apology then," Dominic said calmly. "I thought not." The Ashworth party fled. There was no other word for it. They moved quickly, heads down, and disappeared into the rainy night. Eleanor finally allowed herself to breathe. Dominic turned to her for the first time. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the weight of stories untold, the complexity of a man who existed between worlds. "Are you all right?" he asked. Yes, thank you. You did not have to do that." "No," he agreed. "I did not have to. But some things cannot be allowed to stand." He reached into his jacket and produced a business card. Plain white, no logo, just a phone number. "If anyone gives you trouble because of tonight, call this number. Day or night, someone will answer." Elena took the card. Her fingers brushed his, and she felt something shift. A door opening, a path appearing where none had existed before. "Why?" she asked. "Why help?" "Me? You do not even know me." Dominic studied her for a moment. "Because I was raised by a woman like you. A woman who worked herself to exhaustion so her children could survive. A woman who was treated as less than human by people who had never earned a single thing in their lives." His voice softened. "She died believing she had no value. I will not stand by and watch that happen to anyone else." He turned and walked back to his booth. His men rose, leaving money on the table that was far more than the bill required. As Dominic reached the door, he paused. "Eleanor." She looked up. "You are worth more than they will ever understand. Remember that." And then he was gone. Into the rain. Into the night. Leaving Eleanor standing alone with a business card in her hand and a feeling in her chest that she could not name. She did not know it yet, but her life had just changed forever. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel. Stories like this one are uploaded every week, bringing you emotional journeys that stay with you long after the video ends. If you are not subscribed yet, take a moment to do it now so you never miss another chapter of these powerful narratives. 3 weeks passed. Elena kept the business card in her wallet, tucked behind her mother's photograph. She did not call the number. She told herself she did not need to, that the incident at the restaurant was an isolated moment, a strange intersection of lives that would never cross again. But she thought about Dominic Marchetti every single day. It was not romance. At least that was what she told herself. It was curiosity, gratitude, a lingering question about what kind of man defended strangers in restaurants and spoke of his mother with such visible pain. Her life continued in its exhausting rhythm. Morning shifts at the restaurant, afternoon visits to the hospital where her mother lay in a bed that seemed to swallow more of her each day, evening shifts that stretched past midnight, sleep that never lasted long enough. Maria Vargas had been sick for 3 years now. The doctors used words that Eleanor had learned to translate. Aggressive, advanced, limited options. They meant that her mother was dying, and that medicine could only slow the inevitable. Eleanor sat beside her mother's bed one Tuesday afternoon, holding her hand. Maria's skin had become paper-thin, her cheeks hollow, her eyes clouded with medication. "You look tired, mija," Maria whispered. "I am fine, Mama. Just busy at work. You work too much. You should be living, going out with friends, finding someone to love." Eleanor smiled sadly. "I have you to love. That is enough." "It is not enough." Maria's grip tightened with surprising strength. "I have watched you sacrifice everything for me, your youth, your dreams, your heart, and I am grateful, but I am also broken by it. Mama, please, do not talk like this. I will talk however I want. I am dying. That gives me permission." Maria's eyes found clarity for a moment. "Promise me something. Anything. When I am gone, do not disappear into grief. Do not work yourself to death paying bills that do not matter anymore. Find something that makes you feel alive. Find someone who sees you, really sees you." Eleanor felt tears slide down her cheeks. "I promise, Mama." Maria relaxed back into her pillow. "Good. Now tell me about this man, the one who defended you at the restaurant. You think I do not notice when my daughter's eyes change? I may be sick, but I'm not blind." Elena laughed despite her tears. "There is nothing to tell. He helped me, that is all. That is never all." Maria closed her eyes. "The universe does not send people to us by accident, mija. Remember that." Elena stayed until her mother fell asleep. Then she walked out into the cold January air and let herself cry. The following Thursday she returned to work. Rosario's was busy that night. A private party had booked the back room, and Elena moved between tables in a blur of efficiency born from years of practice. She barely had time to think, which was a mercy. Around 9 o'clock the door opened. Elena's hands stopped mid-motion. Dominic Marchetti walked in. Alone this time. No entourage. Just a man in a dark coat, snowflakes melting in his hair, scanning the room until his eyes found hers. He sat at the bar. Elena approached slowly, her heart beating faster than she wanted to admit. "Good evening," she said. "What can I get for you?" "Coffee, black, and some of your time if you can spare it." "I am working." "I know, I will wait." True to his word, he waited. For 3 hours. He drank coffee. He read a newspaper. He watched her work, without making her feel watched. When the restaurant finally emptied, and Marco began closing procedures, Dominic remained. "Your boss," he said as Elena wiped down the bar. He will not mind if we talk. Marco. Elena glanced toward the kitchen where Marco was counting receipts. He pretends not to see things. It is how he has survived this long. Smart man. Dominic folded his newspaper. How is your mother? Eleanor's hands froze. How do you know about my mother? I know many things. It is part of what I do. But I am not asking to pry. I am asking because I care. You do not know me well enough to care. That is true. But I would like to, if you will let me. Elena studied him. In the soft light of the empty restaurant, he looked different than before. Less like a myth, more like a man carrying burdens. That showed in the lines of his face. She is dying, Elena said finally. The treatments are not working. The doctors say it could be weeks, could be months. They do not know. I am sorry. Everyone is sorry. It does not change anything. No, it does not. He was quiet for a moment. May I tell you a story? Eleanor sat down across from him. All right. My mother died when I was 17. Heart failure. She had been sick for years, but she hid it. Worked 2 jobs. Raised 3 children alone. After my father was killed, she never complained, never asked for help, and then one morning she did not wake up. Eleanor felt her throat tighten. I spent years being angry, Dominic continued. Angry at the world that had taken her. Angry at myself for not seeing how much she was suffering. Angry at every person who had ever made her feel small. He paused. That anger built an empire, but it also built walls. Walls that I have spent my entire adult life standing behind. Why are you telling me this? Because I saw something in you that night, something I recognized, a woman carrying weight that should break her, but refusing to fall. I wanted you to know that you are not alone in that fight. The silence between them stretched, but it was not uncomfortable. It was the silence of 2 people recognizing something in each other that words could not quite capture. I should go, Dominic said finally. He stood, leaving money on the bar. But I meant what I said before. If you need anything, call. I may not be a good man, Elena, but I keep my promises. He walked toward the door. Dominic, he turned. Thank you for the story, for being here. He nodded once, and then he was gone. Elena looked at the money he had left, enough to cover months of coffee, and beneath the bills a folded note. She opened it. You deserve more than survival. Let me show you. February arrived with the worst winter New York had seen in 20 years. Snow buried the streets. Ice made everything treacherous. And Maria Vargas slipped further away from the world. Elena had reduced her shifts at Rosario's. Marco understood without her having to explain. He was a man who had seen enough of life to recognize when death was circling. She spent her days at the hospital now, holding her mother's hand, reading to her from the old books Maria had loved when she was healthy, playing the songs that had filled their apartment when Elena was a child. On Valentine's Day, Maria opened her eyes and looked at her daughter with sudden clarity. Elena, I am here, Mama. You are so beautiful, so strong. I wish I could have given you more. You gave me everything. No. Maria shook her head weakly. I gave you struggle. I gave you worry. I gave you a life spent caring for others instead of yourself. Mama, please do not say that. Let me finish. Maria's voice was barely a whisper now. I am proud of you. More proud than I have ever been of anything. But I need you to live after I am gone. Really live, promise me. I promise. And this man, the one you think about when you think I'm not watching, give him a chance. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. How do you know about him? Maria smiled. A mother knows. Even a dying one. Her eyes closed. I love you, Mija. I love you more than the moon loves the night. I love you too, Mama. More than the stars love the sky. Maria's breathing slowed. Her grip relaxed. At 3:17 in the morning on February 15th, Maria Vargas passed away, quietly, peacefully, with her daughter's hand in hers. Elena sat in the silence for a long time. She did not cry. She had expected this moment for so long that when it finally arrived, she felt only a strange emptiness, a hollowing out of everything she had been. The hospital staff came. Paperwork was signed. Arrangements were discussed. Elena moved through it all like a ghost, present but not participating. When she finally stepped outside into the cold morning air, the sun was just beginning to rise. Pink and gold light spread across the snow-covered city, and standing beside a black car at the curb, as if he had known exactly where she would be, was Dominic Marchetti. Elena stopped. He walked toward her slowly. His face was unreadable, but his eyes held something she could only describe as understanding. "How did you know?" she asked. "I told you. I know many things." He stopped in front of her. "I am sorry, Elena. Truly. Everyone keeps saying that. I know it does not help, but I say it anyway because there are no words that do help. There is only presence, only being here." Elena felt something crack inside her, the wall she had built around her grief, the armor she had worn for so long. She fell into him. Dominic caught her, his arms wrapped around her, strong and steady. He did not speak. He simply held her while she finally allowed herself to break. They stood there in the winter sunrise, a woman who had lost everything, and a man who had appeared from nowhere to catch her fall. If you are watching this video and feeling something right now, whether it is sadness, hope, or something you cannot quite name, leave a comment with this phrase: "Some people arrive exactly when we need them." It takes just a second, and it helps me know that this story is reaching hearts like yours. The funeral was small. Eleanor had no extended family. Her father had disappeared before she was born. Her mother's relatives remained in Colombia, too poor to travel. Only a handful of people attended. Marco from the restaurant, 2 nurses who had cared for Maria, and standing at the back of the small chapel, Dominic Marchetti. Eleanor did not speak to him during the service. She was too numb for conversation, but she felt his presence like a warm light at the edge of her vision. Afterward, she stood at the grave. Snow had begun to fall again, soft flakes that landed on the fresh earth like tiny prayers. "She was a good woman," Dominic said, appearing beside her. "I can see it in the daughter she raised." "You did not know her?" "No, but I know you. And children are mirrors of their parents, the best parts at least." Elena was silent for a long moment. "What happens now?" "What do you mean?" "I have spent the last 3 years caring for her. Every decision I made was about keeping her alive. And now," she trailed off, "now I do not know who I am anymore." Dominic turned to face her. "You are exactly who you have always been. Strong, resilient, capable of love that most people never experience. Your mother did not make you who you are, Elena. She simply gave you the space to become yourself." "That sounds like something from a book." "It is. My mother used to say it to me." He paused. "She also used to say that grief is not the end of love. It is the continuation of it. We carry the people we lose inside us. Their voices become our thoughts. Their strength becomes our courage." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks, mixing with the snowflakes. "I do not know how to do this alone." "You are not alone." His voice was firm. "You have never been alone. Not since the night I walked into that restaurant." She looked at him. Really looked. Past the expensive coat and the powerful presence, into the eyes of a man who had built an empire from pain and was offering her a hand in her own darkness. "Why me?" she asked. "You could have anyone. Women who are richer, more beautiful, less complicated. Why choose to be here with me?" Dominic was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than she had ever heard it. "Because you remind me of what matters. Because in a world where I am surrounded by people who want something from me, you have never asked for anything. Because when I look at you, I see a version of myself that might have been if life had dealt different cards. I am a waitress, Dominic. I have nothing to offer you. You have everything to offer. You have honesty, courage, A heart that has not turned hard despite everything it has endured. He stepped closer. I am not asking you to love me, Eleanor. I am asking you to let me stand beside you, to let me help carry the weight you have been carrying alone for too long. Eleanor searched his face for deception and found none, only sincerity, only something that looked terrifyingly like hope. I do not know how to let someone in, she admitted. Neither do I. But maybe we can learn together. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers were warm despite the cold. Okay, she said quietly. Okay. Okay. I will let you stand beside me. I will let you help. For the first time since her mother's death, Eleanor felt something other than emptiness. A small flame flickering in the darkness, the beginning of something she could not yet name. In the weeks that followed, Dominic kept his word. He did not try to control her or change her. He simply showed up, day after day, in small ways that accumulated into something larger. He arrived at her apartment with groceries when he noticed her refrigerator was empty. He sat with her in silence when she needed quiet. He talked with her for hours when she needed distraction. He never pressured her for more than she could give. Elena learned pieces of his world, the legitimate businesses that served as fronts, the men who answered to him with absolute loyalty, the enemies who lurked in shadows, waiting for weakness. She understood that loving Dominic, Marchetti meant accepting a certain amount of danger, but she also saw the other side, the orphanages he funded anonymously, the families he protected when systems failed them, the code of honor that governed his actions, even when those actions existed outside the law. You are not what I expected, she told him one evening as they sat in his penthouse overlooking Central Park. What did you expect? A monster, someone cold, someone who sees people as tools to be used. He smiled slightly. I have been called all of those things. By people who do not know you. Perhaps, he turned to face her, or perhaps they know a version of me that I do not show you. We all have different faces, Elena. The question is which one is real. Which one do you think is real? He was quiet for a moment. I think the real me is the one who sits here with you, the one who feels peace for the first time in decades, the one who wants to be better than he is. Eleanor leaned into him. His arm wrapped around her shoulders. I think I am falling in love with you, she said softly. I know. She laughed. You are supposed to say it back. I know that too. He pressed a kiss to her hair. I have loved you since the moment you looked at Victoria Ashworth with fire in your eyes and dignity in your spine. I have loved you through every shift you worked, every hospital visit, every tear you have cried, thinking no one was watching. That is slightly unsettling. I prefer to call it thorough. They sat together as night fell over the city, two people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, two broken halves forming something that almost resembled wholeness. But peace, Elena would soon learn, never lasts for people like them. Spring arrived, the snow melted, the trees in Central Park budded with new life, and Elena Vargas began to believe that happiness might be possible after all. She had moved into Dominic's penthouse at his insistence, not because she could not afford her own place, but because the apartment she had shared with her mother held too many ghosts. Every corner was a memory. Every sound was an absence. In the penthouse, she found something unexpected, a sense of home that had nothing to do with walls or furniture. Home was the way Dominic looked at her over morning coffee. Home was the sound of his voice on the phone, checking in during his endless meetings. Home was falling asleep beside someone who made her feel safe. She had returned to Rosario's, working part-time now. Dominic had offered to support her completely, but Elena refused. Her work was part of her identity, and she would not surrender that, even for love. Life found a rhythm. Then Victoria Ashworth returned. Elena did not see her at first. She was in the kitchen reviewing inventory with Marco when one of the servers mentioned that the private room had been booked for a special event. Some society thing, the server said. Lots of money, lots of attitude. You know the type. Elena knew. She emerged from the kitchen to find Victoria Ashworth standing in the center of the restaurant, directing her assistants like a general commanding troops. The woman's eyes swept the room until they landed on Elena. Recognition flashed, then something else, something that looked like satisfaction. "Well, well," Victoria said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "If it is not our little Colombian waitress. Still here, I see, still serving your betters." Elena felt heat rise to her cheeks, but kept her composure. "Good evening, Mrs. Ashworth. Your room is ready." "I am sure it is." Victoria stepped closer, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. "Tell me, how is your protector? The gangster who thought he could humiliate me in public? I do not know what you are talking about." "Oh, I think you do." Victoria's smile was predatory. "I have done my research, you see. Dominic Marchetti, quite the interesting man, built his empire on bodies and broken lives. And you what, his new entertainment, his charity project?" Elena's hands trembled at her sides. "My personal life is none of your concern. Everything is my concern. My husband may have been frightened that night, but I was not. I do not forget insults, and I certainly do not forgive them." "What do you want?" Victoria leaned in close. "I want you to know that this is not over. I have friends in places your gangster cannot reach, political friends, media friends, friends who would love to know about the woman sharing Dominic Marchetti's bed." "Are you threatening me?" "I am making a promise." Victoria straightened. "Enjoy your time at the top, darling. It will not last." She swept toward the private room, her entourage following like satellites orbiting a cold sun. Elena stood frozen. The familiar feeling of powerlessness that she thought she had escaped came flooding back. For all her growth, all her love, all her new life, she was still the immigrant waitress who did not belong in certain worlds. That night she told Dominic everything. He listened in silence, his jaw tight, his eyes hardening with each word. "She cannot hurt you," he said when she finished. "She thinks she has power, but her power is borrowed. Mine is not. Dominic, please, I do not want violence. I do not want you to do anything that could—" "Elena." He took her hands. "I would never do anything that puts you at risk, but I also will not allow her to terrorize you. There are other ways to handle people like Victoria Ashworth." "What ways?" "The kind that leave no marks but teach lasting lessons." Over the following weeks, strange things began to happen in Victoria Ashworth's world. Her favorite designer suddenly discovered that her latest collection was booked solid for another client. The restaurant where she held her weekly charity luncheons experienced an unexpected closure for renovations. The society columnist who faithfully reported her every appearance stopped, returning her calls. Nothing violent, nothing illegal, just a systematic dismantling of the social machinery that Victoria used to define her worth. And then the investigation began. It started with a routine audit of Richard Ashworth's real estate holdings. Routine became thorough, thorough became damning. Years of corner-cutting, code violations, and tenant exploitation emerged from the shadows. Elena watched the news coverage from Dominic's penthouse. "Did you do this?" she asked. "I made a few phone calls. Suggested that certain regulatory bodies might want to take a closer look at certain businesses." He shrugged. "The evidence was already there. I simply ensured it was found." "This will destroy them." "No, it will correct an imbalance. People like the Ashworths believe they can treat others as less than human because their money protects them. When that protection fails, they learn what everyone else already knows. That cruelty has consequences." Eleanor looked at him. The man who commanded empires with whispers. The man who held her at night like she was the most precious thing in his world. "I am falling in love with you more every day," she said. "Good." He pulled her close. "Because I have already fallen completely." Summer brought warmth to New York, long evenings on rooftops, walks through parks alive with color, and a proposal that Eleanor never saw coming. They were at Rosario's, the same restaurant where they had first met, the same table where Victoria Ashworth had tried to strip Elena of her dignity. It seemed fitting somehow that the next chapter of their story would begin in the same place. Dominic had been quiet all evening, not distant, but contemplative. Elena assumed he was thinking about business. He always had multiple operations running, multiple fires to manage. She was wrong. After dinner, he took her hand. Elena, I have spent my entire adult life building walls, protecting myself from loss, from betrayal, from the kind of pain. That broke me when my mother died. I believed that strength meant standing alone. She squeezed his hand, saying nothing. And then I met you. A woman who had every reason to be broken but refused to break. A woman who showed me that strength is not about walls. It is about choosing to love despite knowing that love makes us vulnerable. He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. Eleanor's breath caught. I am not perfect, Dominic continued. My world is complicated, dangerous. There will be storms ahead that I cannot prevent. But I promise you this, I will stand beside you through every one of them. I will protect you not because you need protection, but because protecting you is my honor and my joy. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple but stunning. A diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the candlelight like captured stars. Elena Vargas, will you marry me? Time stopped. In that moment, Elena saw everything. Her mother's face smiling from wherever she now existed. The years of struggle that had led to this table, the improbable path from exhaustion and grief to love and hope. Yes, she whispered. Then louder, with tears streaming down her face, yes. 1,000 times yes. Dominic slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, of course it did. He paid attention to every detail. He kissed her. Soft at first, then deeper. A promise sealed in a restaurant that had witnessed their beginning and now celebrated their forever. Applause broke out. Elena looked up to find the entire staff of Rosario's watching, Marco in the center with tears in his eyes. I may have told a few people, Dominic admitted. A few? Perhaps more than a few. She laughed. For the first time in longer than she could remember, Elena laughed with complete abandon. The wedding was held in October. Not a lavish society affair, but an intimate ceremony in a small church in Little Italy. The same neighborhood where Dominic's mother had once worked. The same streets where Eleanor had learned to survive. 70 guests attended. Dominic's closest associates, Eleanor's co-workers from the restaurant, the nurses who had cared for Maria, people who mattered, people who understood that love was not about spectacle, but about bearing witness to two souls joining. Elena wore her mother's wedding dress. It had been stored in a box for decades, yellowed with age, but a talented seamstress had restored it to its original beauty. Wearing it felt like carrying Maria with her down the aisle. Dominic waited at the altar. His face, usually so controlled, showed open emotion for the first time in front of so many people. When he saw Elena, he smiled. Not his usual measured expression, but something younger, something hopeful. She reached him, took his hands. I love you, she whispered. I know, and I love you, more than I have ever loved anything. The vows were simple, promises of partnership, of honesty, of standing together against whatever life would bring. When the priest pronounced them husband and wife, the small church erupted in joy. At the reception, held in Rosario's private room, Elena found herself standing by the window, looking out at the city lights, thinking about the journey that had brought her here. Dominic appeared beside her. What are you thinking about? He asked. My mother. I wish she could have seen this. She did. She is. Eleanor leaned into him. You really believe that? I believe that love does not end with death. I believe that the people we lose become part of us, guiding us, celebrating with us, even when we cannot see them. He paused. Your mother gave you the strength to survive long enough to find this happiness. That is not coincidence. That is love continuing beyond the boundaries of the physical world. Eleanor felt tears on her cheeks, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude for the man beside her, for the love she had found, for the mother who had made it all possible. 1 year later, they welcomed a daughter. They named her Maria. For the grandmother she would never meet in this life, but who lived on in every story they told, every lesson they taught, every moment of love they shared. Elena held her daughter in the hospital room, Dominic beside her, and felt something she had not felt in decades. Complete. "We did it," she whispered. "We did." Dominic kissed her forehead. "Though I suspect the real work is just beginning." "Are you ready?" "With you?" "Always." They left the hospital together, a family, built not from perfection, but from two broken people who had chosen to become whole together. In the car, as they drove through Manhattan toward their home, Elena looked out the window at the city that had witnessed her struggle, her grief, her transformation, and her triumph. She thought about the woman she had been 3 years ago, exhausted, hopeless, serving people who saw her as invisible. And she thought about the woman she was now, wife, mother, partner to a man who saw her as everything. The journey between those two women had been painful, full of loss and fear and moments when giving up seemed easier than going on. But every step had been necessary. Every tear had watered the seeds of who she would become. "What are you thinking about?" Dominic asked. "About how strange life is, how the worst moments sometimes lead to the best ones." "The rain that night. If it had not been raining, you would not have been the only one working. Victoria Ashworth would have had someone else to target, and you would not have been there to witness it." "Exactly. Everything happened exactly as it needed to happen." He reached for her hand. "I do not believe in coincidence, Eleanor. I believe in destiny finding its way despite all the obstacles we place in its path." Eleanor looked at baby Maria, sleeping peacefully in her carrier. "She is going to have a different life than I did," she said quietly. "She is going to have every opportunity, every advantage, every ounce of love we can give her, but also the truth about where she comes from, about the struggle that made this possible. Always the truth." Dominic nodded. "She should know that her mother is the strongest woman I have ever met, that her grandmother gave everything so her family could survive, that strength and love and courage are her birthright." They arrived at the penthouse, their home, no longer just a place to sleep, but a space filled with memories and possibilities. As Elena carried Maria inside, she paused in the doorway, looked back at Dominic. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me. When everyone else looked right through me, you saw me, the real me, and you loved what you saw." Dominic stepped close, kissed her softly. "Thank you for letting me in, for trusting me despite every reason not to, for making me believe that even someone like me could have this." They stood together in the doorway of their home, a former waitress and a man who had rebuilt the world to keep her safe, two people who had found each other in the chaos and chosen, against all odds, to build something beautiful. And in Elena's arms, baby Maria stirred, opened her eyes, looked at her parents with the pure trust that only newborns possess. A new chapter, a new beginning, a love story that would continue for generations. If you have watched this far, it is because you liked this story. Leave a comment saying, "I watched this far," so I can get to know you and see who really enjoys the stories here on the channel. Your engagement means the world, and it helps more people discover these emotional journeys. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like this video. Your likes tell the algorithm that this content matters, and it helps us reach more viewers who are searching for stories like this one. And finally, if you have not subscribed yet, now is the perfect time. We release new stories every week, each one crafted to take you on an emotional journey you will not forget. Subscribe and tap the notification bell so you never miss another chapter. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of this community. Until next time, remember, the most powerful stories are the ones about ordinary people finding extraordinary love.